Hi everybody, welcome back. Professor Wills here. Let's get into one of the art historical periods that's probably the most popular if you were to survey art fans out there, and that would be French Impressionism. French Impressionism would be the choice of many museums if they want to kind of get the crowds in the door. They'll put on a big exhibit of French Impressionist art. And we'll see in this unit why it's so popular. But let's begin with our first artist. Claude Monet is considered the father of French Impressionism. He really started to move art in a new direction, in a way that starts to focus on things from his contemporary world. So in a way, it's an interesting offshoot that evolved into something with much more scope and momentum than realism. But what you do find with French Impressionism is a connection to the artist's contemporary world, with urban themes of leisure time activities, a focus on transitory themes, on the study of light, which we'll talk about with Monet, but on other themes relating to transitions and fleeting moments. But unlike realism, we're not going to see the social cause agenda in French Impressionist art. We're not going to see themes of social inequity, themes of illuminating unfair labor practices, that kind of thing. French Impressionist art is popular for that reason in its day, but also in contemporary times as well, because it does capture themes that are beautiful, whether indoors or outdoors. But with Claude Monet, it would definitely be a more dominant interest in outdoor subjects. So without further ado, let me explain why that is. All right, pulling up my PowerPoint now, I'm going to show you a painting you're not responsible for, but I wanted you to see it nevertheless, because it's painted by an artist we just recently studied, Edward Manet. It's a painting of French Impressionist Monet, so keep that in mind. There's just one letter difference in the spellings of their last name. The title is Claude Monet and His Studio Boat from 1874. So this is just something for you to look at as I give you a little background on Claude Monet. Claude Monet was an artist who caught Manet's attention because Manet, as we know, was a rebel. And he recognized in other artists a similar spirit, a willingness to do things unconventionally, to break from the norm, and that was Claude Monet. So, for instance, Claude Monet often didn't work in his studio, as most artists did. He would leave and go outside and pursue his subject, have a direct connection with his subject by going outside. So when you have artists working outside, it's called en plein air. En plein air is a French term, but you've probably heard the expression plein air painting, you know, when you go down to Santa Monica and you walk the pier and maybe you see people with little easels, kind of like weekend painters. Those are the plein air painters who are working directly with their subject and right in front of their eyes, instead of doing something maybe like Albert Bierstadt did, where he made a bunch of sketches and studies and then took all that back to his studio to render his incredible landscape paintings. Monet was famous for applying paint directly to canvas, very much like Caravaggio. He was that confident an artist. So you can see for these reasons that Manet was like, you know, found him friend material in the art world. And what you find in this painting that Manet executed is Monet connecting with his subject directly by converting a boat to a little mobile art studio. And you can see the artist on the left. You can see his wife here hanging out with him, and he is busy at work. Okay, moving on to our next artwork. This is the artwork that will start to illuminate to you, wink wink, the subject has to do with sunrise, but it'll illuminate to you what Monet was after as a French Impressionist. The title of the painting is Impression: Sunrise. 1872 is the date. Okay, when this painting was being created, it's around the time where Claude Monet and some of his fellow artists who had a similar passion and craving for a new direction to take their art realized that if he exhibited this painting at the Salon, the big mega art show in Paris, where usually is desirable to have your art hang there, but we're in the era of the art critic, and Monet knew he would be shredded when they took a look at this painting. And the problem they would have with it would be all of that visible brushwork. So Claude Monet organized a separate salon and recruited some of his buddies to join him in a separate art show, which was quite a bold thing to do. But the critics, of course, hunted him down and saw the painting here and said, what is this? All this visible brushwork, broad strokes of paint, you don't even carefully blend anything. It looks like a draft. It looks like just an impression instead of the final resolution of your vision of this landscape scene. And Claude Monet and his friends kind of giggled, and they said, you know what, we're just going to take that insult and turn it into something positive. So from that point forward, they were known as the Impressionists. That's where that art title came from. All right, looking at the painting itself here, it looks like the subject is a harbor scene. You see a harbor, you see little boats in the water, you see different kind of, things associated with harbors, larger ships with their masts, a few smokestacks perhaps, and cranes associated with kind of an urban harbor scene. And as the title indicates, we are at the crack of dawn. The sun is just coming up in the sky, and we have this moment of transition from the darkness of night to daytime. This is what is interesting to Monet, the study of light. So the subject, I know we've been talking about the rise of landscape, and then the human elements are starting to shrink away, and landscape is becoming a subject of its own. But though that's true, what we find that's compelling to Monet when he looks at subjects in the outdoors is light. And the description of light, the transitory quality of light, and also how to use this new thing that was getting all of the artists' attention, and that was color theory to describe light. This is the true subject of the painting. It's not the harbor scene, it's not the little fisherman, it's the study of light and its transitory quality. Now, Monet was formally trained. He went to the Royal Art Academy, he knew all the rules, and yet he was willing to break away from all of that formal rendering, the blending of, paint to a undisturbed, to the point where you can't even discern each brush stroke. And he felt that by seeing that visible brushwork, it helped convey this transitory quality. If you look at a body of water, right, there are ripples on the water. And so that brushwork describes all of that transition as a body of water constantly flickers and moves. It's never static or frozen in time. What he also is showing, and you can see this around the holidays with car commercials, they always spray the streets wet and have the car driving down the road, you know, at night, and you get all this kind of reflection on the car and on the streets. But a body of water is a perfect kind of muse to study light. And as the sun rises up at the crack of dawn, at sunrise here, you can see the water reflected. So this is a great example of how Monet is using color to describe the sunrise. He's using soft oranges and reds, maybe even pale yellows, but he isn't going for that white tube of paint to show highlights and then the black tube of paint to show shadow. He's using color to describe both. So again, those warm colors I just described, and then blues and violets and grays to describe this transition from darkness to light. And you can see that in the sky as well. So, French Impressionism, Claude Monet, interested in the study of light, interested in transitory or fleeting moments in time. And that's what you find in his painting, Impression Sunrise from 1872. All right, tune into the next video and we'll meet another muse of his that has to do something with architecture, but the real subject is the study of light. All right, see you then.